Guys, welcome back to the After Action Review, episode 5. You guys know me. I'm the world's most okayest Green Beret. Tonight, we have probably one of my favorite people on Twitter, Snake Eater 36. He's a Special Forces officer. He hails from 7th Group, but he decided life's taking him in a different direction, much like me. And I came from 5th to 19th Group, and he came from 7th, and now he's with 20th Group. He's a dive guy, so he wanted to be a SEAL, but didn't quite have the hair to do so.
Ouch.
Yeah, right? So here he is. But you guys know him on Twitter as Snake Eater 36, and the 36 I have to ask, is that the 3-6 I would think refers to a team, but dive teams end in the number 5. What's going on there?
Yeah, so I made that Twitter account, I think, or either before I was a Green Beret or like right after. And it would have been before I got a team. But the 3-6 I was a 3rd platoon gun platoon leader, so I was a 3-6. So that's where
Okay.
I got that. And I don't want to do 9-5 because that's an FSO thing, and so it is what it is. But yeah.
Absolutely. You got to play
Yeah.
it cool, man. You got to play it cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just walking through, I've always said when it comes to Twitter personalities, when it comes to officer personalities, in social media, Snake Eater is probably the standard that's been set. And I say that because, well, come on. I mean, I say that because honestly, everybody's talking about the civilian military divide, but nobody's talking about the enlisted officer divide. And there needs to be a very important distinction and delineation between the officer side and the enlisted side. But at the same time, I think the O side needs to really check themselves when it comes to approachability and what it really means to lead officers. So I've always said, hey, when it comes to this guy gets it. He really does. When it comes to what it takes to be a detachment commander for an operational detachment alpha, but more so, what does it mean to young officers, young cadets? What does it mean to be a true leader? Not a boss, but a leader. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a huge difference because you have a civilian career like I do now. There's a huge difference between being a civilian boss and leading people in combat. I mean, that's a fact.
Huge. Yeah, there's a huge difference. And that's a lot to unpack. And I think the Army likes to have a lot of kind of officer conversations with officers about what a good leader is, but NCOs don't have very good conversations with officers as to what a good leader is, right? So you don't have, like, when you're doing LDPs, you usually have a brigade or battalion commander standing in front of a bunch of O's telling them how they became a brigade or battalion commander. You very rarely have a team sergeant or platoon sergeant standing in front of company commanders or platoon leaders saying what he's looking for in a good leader that's going to take his platoon to success. But you come into a platoon as some boot ass 01 first lieutenant if you're not prior service, and this dude's literally could probably be your dad and has at least 10 to 15 years in service on you, and you're going to tell this dude what's what. So there's some interesting dynamics that I think a lot of junior O's overlook, and then a lot of senior O's, because they become successful, have a tendency to really poo-poo in terms of how they want to develop their leaders.
But why does that why does that come about? I mean, that's an obvious shortcoming. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, does that happen at the introductory level? Does that happen at the OCS level, at the ROTC level, at the academy level? Are they just not teaching officers or would be or to be officers to really embrace what a senior NCO or what a platoon sergeant or what a first sergeant has to say?
So that's an interesting, I've had this conversation before, and ironically enough, it was with my dad. And the conversation we had was, like, what makes good leaders different, or what makes successful leaders different than everybody else? And I don't know I can't really speak for other officers, but what I can say is probably what's given me a little bit more insight or has helped me was, um, I was raised by an NCO, and the first thing I always kind of viewed enlisted guys as is like equals in humans. Like at the end of the day, like there's always a time and a place, and you are the one in charge, and you're responsible for what happens or doesn't happen in terms of your platoon or your unit's performance. But like you're one guy, and the rest of that organization or that platoon they're all enlisted guys, and your ass is on the line for them, and you have to gain that trust. And gaining that trust stems from not looking down on those guys or assuming that just because you have a college degree, you're better than them. So it's a really hard dynamic. I think the other thing is like the Army preaches this mentorship, right? Like you need to be a mentor. You're a leader. Always be a mentor. And I've always thought like you should be an advocate. You don't necessarily like you can't be a mentor to a guy with 15 years in the Army, but you need to be his advocate. You need to be there and support him, like he's probably going to be supporting you when some specialist is bad mouthing you because you can't, qualify with an M4 or whatever.
Does that really just boil down to kind of just? Is it an ego check, or is it the fact like even in the private sector, like, all right, what is a second lieutenant or a first lieutenant? They're what, middle management?
Yeah, it's an ego check. Yeah, it really is. Like, and I also think I think it's a sense of humor, right? Because you like if we're talking about field qualification, where you're a brand new PL and you get taped upside down to a tree, the successful leaders that get field qualified are going to be dudes that laugh it off, dust themselves off, and understand that like this is nothing personal. The minute you take it personal and you view this as some sort of slight against your authority as a leader, is the minute you kind of become a bad leader. Like you can't take yourself too seriously all the time. When bullets are flying, that's when your authority matters. But when you're smoking and joking and the platoon is relaxed and those guys crack a joke, like, I don't know, man, I never took anything personally, and I never got field qualified again, but I've seen some people get field called over and over.
I guess that's what it boils down to is like, approach the job with a sense of humor. Don't take it too seriously. And, listen, on Twitter, on social media, I think it's an interesting dichotomy between like enlisted side takes and officer side takes. And you can tell who the officers that take the time to learn about their Joes are. It's pretty easy. But I think that might be something that's overlooked, and maybe that's just a personality flaw or something. I don't know what it is, but I think that's important. And I always point, you yourself, you've been on social media, you've put out information I think is critical reading for would-be officers or well, I'm serious, man. Like, seriously.
I appreciate that.
It is what it is. It's coming from the private sector side. It's middle management, and middle management, the whole purpose of middle management is to act as a divide between upper management and the workforce. That's the only reason middle management is there.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's lost on a lot of people because they get a little bit of authority where they can give orders and they expect people to execute, and that's okay. But I think a lot of the humility that comes with the position, and coming from where I stand, I mean, personally, I could have easily have gone to OCS. I didn't want to because I didn't want to spend time in the regular Army. That was my reasoning. But that humility, and I think a lot of people need to realize it's an absolute privilege. And this is what I was talking towards in the last episode was it's a privilege to lead soldiers.
Yeah. And it really is.
I think a lot of people have forgotten that. Even as an NCO, like technically I'm not giving the orders. My purpose is to execute said orders, but when we get attached to a big Army unit or we bring in big Army to train, it's a privilege to train those younger soldiers. And I think that just needs to become the new mindset. That needs to become the new standard amongst officers in the Army. I think that's my opinion. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think that needs to become the mindset that we bring new officers into the fold as.
No, I think you're 100% right. And I mean, like, if I'm adding some gravity to the circumstances, like,
please do.
We're, obviously we're still at war and everybody's tired of the GWAT, but at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. Like, we're still there. We still have, guys deployed that are seeing action, that are in direct combat. You're like, your job as a leader is to lead these guys, look at them in the eye, and make them as effective as possible. And a lot of that revolves around understanding your men and being humble and being able to connect with them personally too. Like, the best performers, you look at sports, and I don't really like using a sports analogy, but you look at athletes that run successful teams, and they're people first and leaders second, but they're able to combine both of those skills together to put themselves into a successful setting. In addition to that, like, a lot of people are getting really frustrated about the Army's standards or what the Army's goal is. And at the end of the day, like, our job is to go out there and kill the enemy, full stop, right? And so we have to hold ourselves and each other accountable. And like, at the end of the day, like, you're going to close with and destroy the enemy. And so you should be training, especially if you're active duty, you should be training yourself and your people every day for that potential eventuality. And I think that, like, right now, I don't want to say right now, but I think there's a lot of times where we kind of mislead ourselves in terms of, like, the Army not doing what we want. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, you're going to do what you're told because that's the ultimate goal.
I mean, are we just living in a world that's ripe with symptoms and the fact that we're facing the tail end of the GWAT, right? It's not the days where every unit was on a constant rotation. Everybody was getting ready to mobilize and gather gear and go to Afghanistan or Iraq. I mean, is it because combat rotations have become a rarity that we've kind of lost our way? I mean, you would think, like, in a heavily in a unit that is totally inundated with combat, and there's plenty of documentaries out there and visual works that kind of try their best to encapsulate those moments. But at the end of the day, it's all cerebral for the outside observer, and I think it's cerebral for the brand new officer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, have we lost that just because we're on the tail end of it, and there's not necessarily an expectation? 8-9 years ago, a new second lieutenant coming in, they would know that they're going to war.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I mean, when I got my commission, I went to the 101st, I knew where I was going for 15 months. Like, I knew what was going on. I think it's a couple things, and I think it has a lot of layers to it. If we're talking just the O Corps, these are mostly kids that are finishing ROTC or coming out of West Point and not having the social weight of 9/11, putting them in that circumstance. I think your and my generation joined for a very specific reason and with a very specific intent. And I think it's kind of, I don't want to say wholesale, but it seems like the O Corps is kind of turning back to that pre 9/11 mentality of, I love my country and I want to serve. But I don't want to say it seems directionless, but I don't think it has nearly as much of the clear direction as maybe 9/11, that 9/11 service generation has. To add to that, I think you have a really strong cadre of enlisted guys, especially senior enlisted, that have seen a lot of stuff, but I think it's stifled by careerism. I think it's stifled by O careerism because the GWAT has completely accelerated the O Corps to who's got the most stuff now that gets to the top, as opposed to who's the best leader for this position. And so now you see these really, pretty well decorated O's that have seen, that may have seen combat or may not have, but are there because of what they've done, not necessarily how they've led. And so you're not even managing organizations based on personality or fit. You're just doing it because this guy has a BSMV, was in this location, and did well. That doesn't. But again, like, if you're in SOF and you see that, like, you're completely discounting the fact that this team sergeant probably carried this, this commander for this rotation or whatever else. So I think officers are put on a pedestal a lot of time and promoted into these situations, and then they completely fail because they either don't have the backbone they need or the support they need or whatever. And that isn't to discount their performance or say their performance was any better, but I think the O Corps right now is going through a crisis of conscience, and it's kind of showing in terms of how we're treating future missions.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I mean, you hate to say, oh, an army without a mission has a tendency to get lackadaisical or something, but I think there might be a little bit of truth to that.
Yeah. I mean, I would, and you look at it, right? Like, I hate using this as an example because it's fairly anecdotal, but when you're looking at, you look at the last 2 years of casualties, all SF dudes are soft, right? You're looking at a significant amount of special operations where we're still putting meat to metal, so to speak. And I think a lot of the rest of the regular army I think they're being hamstrung a lot of times. But I mean, that also leads into another larger argument of, kind of why are we over there? What are we doing over there? Why are we, setting so many assets into Afghanistan?
I mean, you and I could talk about that for hours. I mean, really. All right. So kind of moving away from that mentality of, all right, take a commission, take command, and this kind of mindset that you and I had discussed, whether or not it stems from a lackadaisical or the knowledge that they aren't necessarily going to be in combat within 3-4 months of them taking a unit. And so, and then transitioning to the special operations world like you had, and going from a world where you are absolutely, you take your commander's intent, and your commander's intent is a big shot, absolutely a field grade, high field grade. And he's passing it down to you. And then he's expecting you to do what's necessary to execute the mission. And then entering a world like SF where, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and say SF is an NCO-led organization.
100%.
Okay.
Agree.
All right. So when it comes to that, and maybe not you necessarily because you don't have that personality, but for some on that side of the house, how do they reconcile going from being the head honcho, the big cheese, to moving to an organization where you have career soft dudes who have 8, 9, 10 deployments under, with GWAT, and these guys are absolutely 100% combat tested leaders, and entering a world like that?
Yeah, I mean,
how do you reconcile that?
I loved it, man, because I knew I wasn't the best one on the block, right? Like, I'm as an O in SF, you are the least experienced in terms of operational training in that team. So you show up and it's like you basically just got introduced to at least 6 guys that can teach you all sorts of awesome shit for the next 2 years that you're on that team. And then if you have juniors, you get to grow with those junior NCOs, right? Like, you're an O, but that 18 Echo, that junior 18 Echo knows more about comms than you do. And he's 18 years old, right? And the junior 18 Delta knows more about trauma medicine than you do as a 6-year, 5-6-year captain. And so, like, that was the best feeling, is showing up to a dive team, getting told I'm going to dive school, and then getting and seeing all these guys that had all this knowledge, right? Now you're not sitting on an island in a platoon figuring out how to plan this op order. You literally have dudes with Ranger tabs that have spent time in Ranger Regiment or other units that can tell you, hey, look, this is the right answer. Like, you can you augment these guys to, selfishly, if you wanted to build your own career, or you can augment these guys to better yourself. You could better them, right? Like, there's just so many opportunities when you get onto a team to view it other than just, I'm the commander. Because the minute you do that, you are shutting off a door to all of that information and all that, all of what makes a team successful, just because you want to feel like the boss. At the end of the day, like, if the ODA is a car, you're sitting in the passenger seat, giving the dude general directions, and Team Daddy is in the driver's seat, operationally driving that car, and you say, "Hey man, I need you to get me from A to B." He'll do all the turns. He knows how to drive this car. He knows what he's doing. You let him drive that car, and he's going to get you to that place. And it might even be a little bit fun. But the minute you start telling him to turn left or right, everybody in the car is going to be really pissed at you. He's going to be mad that you're backseat driving. Like, it is what it is. And my dad gave me that analogy, and that's been that analogy, quite honestly, has been the best analogy to approach leading an ODA that I've had. In addition to that, I showed up to the team with a mop, a box of crayons, and a 6-pack. And I literally said, "Hey guys, I'm here for a couple summers. I'm going to be in the corner if you need me. Beer's in the fridge. I'll clean up when you're done." And I did a little bit of research. I did a little bit of research, and I knew this dive team was extremely aggressive. And so I wanted to kind of take the piss out of these guys, and I showed up with that. And the team sergeant goes, "That was the best way you could have approached it. You got a little bit of humor. You knew where you stood. Like, let's get you to dive school. You'll be one of the family, no problem." And it works, right? Like, because you may have a college degree, but you may be the least educated. A lot of times Deltas are going towards get their PA. Team sergeants, they're no slackers, man. Mine was getting his master's degree. Like, you will have equals. You treat your equals like equals. It's same way in the civilian world, right? You may have a manager that has a bachelor's degree. You may have a master's or whatever. He's still your boss. He's still giving you, instructions on how to execute stuff. But if he's a good boss, he's going to ask you, what your opinion is. Is there's a better way around this?
Absolutely.
Like an SF team leader.
So it seems like the big takeaway is what? Check the ego at the door and bring a case of beer.
Oh, dude, every day. That would be my number one suggestion, is be ready to learn, because you will learn.
All right, God, I hope the next generation, and I say this with 100% sincerity, I really hope the next generation of officers heed your words, and because it is incredibly important, whether or not you're on the conventional side or your career takes you to the soft side. It really is, because at the end of the day, especially on the soft side, it's a team effort, and everybody on that team's opinion is valued, and they take every single thought that might come across around a round table when it comes to mission planning, things like that. They take it seriously.
Yeah, I don't want to shit on field grades when I say this, but like, your OER
Go ahead,
is
man.
important.
Just say it.
Your OER is important, but your OER isn't what an O4 says on a piece of paper. Your OER is when that NCO emails you 2 years down the road and it's like, "Hey man, I was thinking about you today at the range, and I want to let you know I really appreciate what you did for the team." Or the captain that you ripped out with or whatever was like, "Hey man, can you give me some advice for whatever? I really respected how the team was with you, and I want to know what made you successful," right? Like, it's those things that are your no shit OER. I say this with all sincerity. I have never cared about senior rater comments. I've cared about what the majors I respect have to say about me, and for the rest of the time, my goal has been to get guys back home safe and to lead them appropriately towards whatever mission success my commander gave me was, period.
Oh my God. You are a rare gem in a sea of coal. All right, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that, because honestly, I think that we can beat a dead horse. I think you've made your point. I think you've made a good point. And,
thank you.
And I hope the next generation listens to what you have to say. All right, moving on to something that's a little less serious than leading men into combat, but still important in the DoD today. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. It's woke military Twitter.
Ooh, how I miss it.
Oh, it's literally, I wake up and it just fuels me because I know I'm gonna turn on my phone and I'm gonna pull it up and I'm gonna see some garbage that's just gonna send me into a rage.
Yeah, and there's like levels of it. Like there, like who was it Murphy was talking about, like the reaching woke back mountain, and it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you've got. So I kind of took the thunder from you, but like you have different echelons of it. You've got some people that are genuinely liberal and politically liberal, that just lean left, like they're just left-leaning soldiers, and it's kind of this, it's passable for being able to have an adult conversation and agree to disagree, right?
And I just want to say that is totally okay.
Yeah, 100%. And
totally.
And we're, look, if you had an army full of, you know, right wingers or whatever, to whatever degree you wanted, like you probably wouldn't have all the leaders that you wanted. And there are, like, I know some very good, extremely liberal SF officers that are currently serving in the regiment today. Great dudes, awesome leaders. I completely disagree with their stance on firearms, politics, etc. But they're still really good guys. And then there are people who it's almost like if when I got on Twitter, I thought it was a troll, because I could not imagine people being so vehemently blind in terms of their political leaning that some of the stuff they say is just, it's peak hilarity. Like, it would almost be funny if you realize that these people weren't leading men and women overseas.
And that's my big issue, man. And it's not just that they're leading men and women, but, you know, in the realm of social media, they command audiences. They command general officers and policy experts and wonks and congressional staffers. Like, if you were to pull up some of the most prolific, and like Murphy said, it's woke back mountain and you have to pay your dues. But if you pull up the most prolific riders of that clown show ride, if you pull up their followers list, you're going to find an incredible list of who's who in DC.
Oh yeah, yeah. And what's even more funny is when you look at their resume, or you look at their background, it's like it's very forgettable. And I think, I don't want to say it's compensation, but it smacks so much of it, because it's like, you read, and it's very strong on other ends of the spectrum too. But the first thing is you get this, as a soldier, right, as a veteran of 5 years in a communications company, I'm very skilled with an M4, right, or whatever. And it's just, you read this and it's like, yeah, I'm sure civilians think that's really important, and anybody who wants to take advantage of it and be like, oh, you're bad mouthing a veteran. But the veteran community sees that and it's like, this person's a turd. Like, what?
But I mean, and that's the thing. Like, as you said, their resumes are what, lukewarm at best, room temperature at best.
Yeah, I mean, like, these are the people that, like, you pushed away in the chow hall. Like, I hate to use the term,
but they're but they're the ones that rate the important people listening to them.
It's and that's what's so strange to me is can you imagine somebody wanting to implement policy on, like, for example, like a PT test, and a PT test is generally a measurement of your fitness in combat, when these people have spent very little time in combat, no time in combat, whatever, and their opinion is completely based on their personal experience, right?
Yeah,
it's absolutely it's ridiculous. But I guess they're happy with push-ups, sit-ups, and a run. I don't know.
I mean, if that's the standard, I mean, that's the standard. But
right.
Nowadays, it's not, because, oh my God, the United States Army actually went out and did some research.
Right.
And they figured out what are the movements that people use in combat most often, and what is important. So they create this ACFT, and what happens? It's new to some people. Some soldiers might have to work a little bit harder to pass certain events, like Tuck. And instead of just going out and doing it, they launch a crusade on social media with a following that includes, like we said, important people, and people listen to what they have to say, and they just go off on this tirade about how this new test is designed to kick women out of the military or things like that. I mean, I will always say, when it comes to this leg tucking, people go, oh, you know, this, that, or another thing, it's not important. In combat, you might be doing you might have to get over a wall. I mean, if you have some IDF coming in, or you have to you know, prosecute a target building because you're taking down an HVT or something like that, you have to do these things. Like, the Army has determined it's important. You can't just say, oh, well, that's designed to be discriminatory against my gender. Like, you just can't say that. It's the Army. Or am I wrong here? Like, it's the Army. You have to meet their standards. It's not an equal opportunity employer.
You're absolutely right. And what's funny is, I mean, I assume you've done it too, but like, all SF dudes have done SFAUC or some form of kind of, you know, that urban combat stuff. And it gets more and more physically demanding, and it all stems from experiences that, you know, direct action guys have experienced, right? And so you're lifting yourself up and out of attics, you're moving with kit, right? And so obviously SF dudes have to be fit. SF dudes have to pass the ACFT. But the excuse for, you know, like, what I saw a lot of that would frustrate me was, okay, well, I'm not doing that. You know, you don't need some you know, some pogue or whatever to do that. And it's like, you're right. You're absolutely right. Until you do. And then when you do, what happens, right? Like, there are plenty of there's plenty of conversations when Iraq first hit off and Afghanistan first hit off, when log trains got hit, right? And I'm telling you right now, like, fitness is what matters. It may not reflect your ability as a leader, but it's going to reflect your overall ability as a soldier. And if you're not fit, regardless of what MOS you are or where you hail from, it is going to drastically affect your ability to react, your ability to move, and your ability to save people, quite honestly.
I mean, at the end of the day, a soldier is a soldier. I don't care what your MOS is.
Yep.
When you boil it down, yeah, you might be admin or you might be a cook, but at the end of the day, you're there to support the war fighting. You are. And if low intensity conflicts, or as defined by, you know, policy experts, you know, Iraq was defined as low intensity conflict. It was. I mean, you might, you know, guys who are in the streets of Fallujah might disagree, but as a definition, it was a low intensity conflict.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have dudes living in patrol bases in Iraq. Like, and I don't mean patrol bases and like built up patrol bases. I mean, you're not digging a slit trench, going into a triangle.
No.
Clean, like Ranger School cleaning 240s.
Yeah.
And like, you want to talk about being physically fit. Like, I mean, that mentality, if you go to a near peer conflict, ACFT is going to be the least of your worries.
Seriously.
Sleep is like, I mean, you're going to be running on 2 hours of sleep for months on end. Like, the game will change. And if you being physically fit in GWAT's important, being physically fit in a near peer environment isn't even a question.
It's going to be at the top of your priority list. And that's what I was saying. Like, in a low intensity conflict, we saw support personnel in combat all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And their ability to perform under fire was paramount. And we saw and we saw the failures in it too. Jessica Lynch is a perfect example of what happens when a support unit doesn't prepare for combat.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is. It was a sad story. We lost a lot of good soldiers, but that's the reality of war. But as you say, as we continue on into the 21st century, low intensity conflict is being put on the back burner, because the near peer, as you said, that's the next big thing.
Yeah, and low intensity is the standard, right? Like,
it is.
We've fought it for so long, like, and we've gained a lot of really good institutional and doctrinal knowledge. but I think for a long, I hate saying this because I sound like just some sort of generic officer, but like we've focused on that for so long that I think we've lost a lot of the sharpness when it comes to how we approach that near peerness, right? And I don't want to say like we haven't grown fat on our own success, but we certainly haven't gotten skinny on it either.
No, absolutely not. And I think, you can talk all the crap you want on like the United States Army or the United States military in a whole of the 1980s and the 90s, right? Like they dealt with a lot of budget cuts and things like that, but they trained to go to war against the Soviet menace. And
Oh
the
yeah.
Soviet menace was going to be the fight of their life. It was going to be nasty. It was going to be hand to hand. It was going to be killed or be killed. There was no two ways about it. We're not talking about casualties in the thousands. We're talking about casualties in the tens of thousands.
Yeah, easily. And
And
I mean, you talk about this generation of leaders leading platoons into that, and the first thing I think is like, okay, what have we cut out of OBC, and what have we cut out of training programs that are going to hamstring these guys? Because I don't want to think that it's the people. I want to think it's the organization that may be kind of shortchanging a lot of the leaders, and I think it does, but I think obviously it has that trickle down effect in terms of their development, and then when they get to a platoon or a unit, that's where the failure starts, right? So I think
yeah,
it's a little bit layered, right? You may have leaders that come in and are completely junior and kind of have a chip on their shoulder, and then they go into this training and they don't have what they need in order to succeed, and then they get into a platoon and it fails, right? And so like this is kind of my worry for if we evolve into this near peer conflict of what might happen.
and to the armies, to their defense, they have kind of shifted towards that in terms of the well, at least in SOF. I can only speak to my experience. I didn't spend any time in a convention unit. I'm not currently in a conventional unit, so I can't speak to that. But at least where I am, we've kind of shifted towards that near peer.
Yeah. I think it's because we see the threat too. Like because when we go
So
on,
is Big Army just not
yeah. Well,
tracking it yet?
I think they see the threat, but I think because of our, I don't know how to explain it other than our proximity, right? Because I think we see more than just Afghanistan and Iraq. We see the prevalence of Russian influence in other countries. You know,
Mhm.
especially you go to Eastern Europe, you go to Bulgaria, you hang out in those AOs, and you see a no kidding peer influence that is capable of, you know, US like information intel gathering and activity. In the regular army doesn't see a lot of that because they may go do a JCS exercise and they're just going to jump out of a plane with the 82nd and do
Yeah.
some fire maneuver drills and they're going back home.
And honestly, man, like on Twitter, there was literally a post. I didn't pull it up because I didn't think we'd be talking Russia, but there was literally a post by a conventional side officer who goes, "Oh my God, like we were in Eastern Europe for like an exercise, like jumping in with the 82nd." And they had a conversation between this battalion commander and this platoon leader, or maybe it was a company commander. I can't remember. Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And they had this conversation on open comms, and the battalion commander hung up, and he got a call from a number he didn't realize on this local cell phone. And the whole conversation that he just had with his company commander was replayed to him.
Oh, dude. Yeah,
Like this, like seriously, like I don't know what it is, but like if you're going to be playing, like maybe the army just needs to play catch up. Like if you're going to be playing in Russia's backyard, they need to get wise as to what Russian capes are. They really do.
yeah. I mean, so I mean, gosh, I could go on about this because of my recent experience, but even the concept of unconventional warfare in terms of, disguising your signature, not alluding to any American presence, like not SF dudes, but there are other people within the soft community that don't even understand that. And it's not that they don't understand Russia is a threat or there's a peer threat. It's that we don't know how to handle it. We've gotten so used to using social media. We've gotten so used to just broadcasting our information out there that you can pick and choose when you want to grab that information. And I obviously have some experience on it on Twitter, finding people within Stolen Valor, but quite honestly, it's the exact same thing. Unit organizations are easy to find. I can find out who's the leader of this cavalry unit, go to their Facebook page, find their FRG, and then start just going down the line of who's married to who can do what. And it's like, your secret clearance doesn't matter so much as, okay, I know you have a secret clearance. Now I'll just find your wife and leverage your wife for information, or I'll leverage somebody else for information. So, background checks for secret clearances are obviously important, but at the end of the day, like it matters very little because of the broad reach that social media's allowed bad actors to be able to leverage against you.
I agree. And I say that as a guy who's non-anonymous on social media, but I would never ever put something really important out. But you're right. But you're right. I mean, it is. It's this new world that social media has become totally intertwined in lives, and it's become intertwined in within the Army. I mean, you have I can name one. I'm not going to, but you know who I'm talking about. One specific PAO officer who views like Twitter as a massive tool, and social media as a massive tool in the future of the Army. And part of me goes, hold up, because even sharing personal details, even personal details, that could easily become a security issue, or a potential weak link in the armor of exploiting U.S. service personnel.
Yeah, and it's really a murky water to tread too. I do some of this in my civilian job, and the hard part is as a bad actor, how do you target people, or how do you target what is leverageable, right? Because there's plenty of things where it's like, you may think it's easy to leverage somebody for this information, but if they don't care, they don't care, and it's going to be hard to get that information out of them.
Absolutely.
But to add to that, I mean, like the problem with social media is anonymity is only camouflage. You're only as anonymous as unimportant as you are, because there's always somebody better that can always find your information out. And so even me speaking from the background of anonymity, is somebody good enough could easily find out who I am. And then it's a conversation of, all right, Red, what skeletons in your closet do I want to dig up? And I would, okay, fair enough, dig up as many as you want. It'll be interesting, because the one thing I've always been able to argue is, okay, so you're going to dox me and you're going to find out that I'm a Green Beret. Like, congratulations, you just validated me. So it's it's one of those things where it's like I don't have much to lose, but what I have to lose is my family's anonymity, which is really all I care about. And if I got doxxed, it's like, okay, I'm a Green Beret. Like, what else?
Wow, they could find out you're a dive guy, and
I shave my legs. They got me.
Literally the least cool dudes in the regiment. All right, brother. Well, I'm not going to keep you. Red, I appreciate you coming on, man. We learned. I learned a lot, because it's, honestly, the officer perspective isn't something I listen to a whole lot.
Keep it that way.
I mean, I spend a lot of time kind of ranting and raving as this. I don't want to say I'm not a senior NCO, because I'm not a senior NCO, but I'm an older NCO who's been around the block, and I didn't grow up in the Army. I joined the Army after college, so maybe there is a little bit of a streak of, you can't tell me what to do.
I think that's a streak in all SF guys, though, because
that's probably true.
I don't want to say the term is insubordinate, but
no, because I'm pretty sure that's an actual UCMJ violation.
Yeah, but like I think a lot of good officers, good enlisted guys, good people in general within honestly all of the Army are the ones that can piss off their commander by asking the right hard questions and force them to think about it. So you're good in my book.
All right. Hey, brother, I appreciate it, man. We'll have you on again, man. This was fun. It's just a conversation. That's all I kind of want out of this podcast. It's just
I'm a conversation. You, whenever you need me, I'll be around.
Beautiful. All right, brother. RedDevil 3-6. An actual dive guy, not an actual team ending in 6. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Peace.
Later. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. You know what it is.